Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's going to be a very busy day today. We have class right now, 5:30 today. You're all welcome to join back, and I'll give you, it's going to be a website address for you to remember, an easy one. Go to chabadconejo.com/Yizkor, Yizkor. And we're going to have a pre-Shavuot Yizkor sermon, and then it'll be followed by a world-renowned counter, Aryeh Leib Horowitz, who'll be joining us, and he'll actually chant the Yizkor prayer. That will be this evening, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be aired nationally, so everyone in the entire country will be tuning in as well. So please do join today again, 5:30, just chabadconejo.com/Yizkor. Easy to remember. Then 2 hours later at 7:30 p.m., we have another pre-Shavuot program for you, and that's our Shavuot virtual TED Talks. We're going to have 6 speakers. Each one will be given 10 minutes to talk. So for 1 hour, you're going to hear from 6 different speakers from all different walks of life. That's this evening at 7:30 p.m. And the website here is chabadconejo.com/Shavuot, SHAVUOT. If you check your emails, I'm sure you'll have links to it, but we look forward to having you 2 more times today. So that will be 3 for 1 day. This is in honor of the holiday of Shavuot. Shavuot starts tomorrow evening. It goes through Friday and Shabbat. It's a 2-day holiday focusing on the commemoration of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. This is the anniversary of God marrying us at Mount Sinai. We're going to talk a continuation on the theme of the chosen people, and we're going to focus a little bit on the theme of Yizkor as we see. And we'll make our way through some themes of today. I want to begin with a story. One of the finest, most celebrated classical musicians of modern times is a violinist by the name of Joshua Bell. So about 30 some odd years ago, 35 years ago, at the age of 17, Joshua Bell made his debut at Carnegie Hall. And since then, he has performed with the world's greatest symphony orchestras and conductors. His concerts are always sold out. People are willing to shell out hundreds of dollars to see him play live. Obviously, at this particular time, there are no concerts anywhere. But when he was performing, you could rarely get a ticket to see him. And he always gets standing ovation after standing ovation with requests for encore after encore. The violin that he plays was crafted in 1713. It's one of the Stradivarius violins. He purchased that violin at an auction for $3.5 million. So you're talking about one of the masters of the violin today. Well, several years ago, a journalist with the Washington Post, his name was Gene Weingarten, he decided to conduct an interesting social experiment. And he approached Joshua Bell with this idea. And to his delight, the musician was up for it. He accepted the challenge. What was the challenge? So on a Friday morning, the date was actually January 12th, 2007, 2 days after Joshua Bell accepted the Avery Fisher Prize, the greatest honor a classical musician in America can receive, the violinist himself shows up at 7:51 a.m. at the Mall of the Washington, D.C. Metro Station. This time he's not wearing his tuxedo. He was dressed in jeans, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap. He was pretending to be a lowly street performer. Joshua Bell opens his violin case. He puts some coins as seed money. He tucks his violin under his chin and he begins to play. Now, the pieces that he played were not the popular, ordinary tunes. They were some of the most complex and breathtaking musical masterpieces that have been around for centuries. He put his heart and soul into the music, as if he was performing in the Vienna State Opera House itself, producing the most elegant and pristine notes from this magnificent instrument. He played 6 different pieces over the course of 43 minutes on that morning in the thick of rush hour traffic. During those 43 minutes, and the whole thing was videotaped as part of this social experiment, and Weingarten was asking Mr. Bell to participate in, they counted on the video afterwards a total of 1,097 people passed by during those 43 minutes. 1,097. A total of 7 stopped to hear the music for more than a minute. 7 out of 1,097, which means 1,090 did not stop for more than a minute. 27 people tossed a coin while they hurried past. The rest rushed by totally oblivious, or even throwing sideways glances to the nuisance who was making noise as they were trying to get to where they were going. While this story appeared in the Washington Post, it generated a huge response. Everybody was talking about this social experiment. And many people commented how this article made them cry and think about life, because they realized perhaps what this exercise said about their hurried lives. That here people were just rushing by, they were able to watch the videotape. No one stopped to even for a moment to hear the music that they would have paid hundreds of dollars to listen to in a theater the other night. Now, if we were to interview those 1,090 people that just rushed by, and we were to ask them, so what happened that morning? Where were you rushing? Why didn't you stop to hear the music? We would imagine we would get all different answers. Some would say they were rushing to get to work. Some would say they were rushing because they had an appointment. Some perhaps had a doctor's appointment. Some were going to the gym. Some had an appointment for breakfast. Everyone would give us a different answer why they were rushing that particular morning. But what if after they gave us their first response, we would then ask them another question, and we would say, and why? Why were you going to work? Why were you going to the gym? Why were you going to the doctor's office? If we were to then follow up with a why question, again, we could probably guess what the answers would be. I was going to work because I have to make a living. I have to feed my family. I was going to the doctor because I need to be healthy. I was going to the gym because I like to work out. I was going to the mall because there was a good sale. We know they can answer the second round of why questions. But what if we then went to round 3 and we would say, but why? Why is it important to feed your family? Why is it important to be healthy? We would start bringing this question into a more philosophical question, the philosophical question of why. And at some point, our 1,090 people being interviewed would get rather upset saying, why are you asking me such silly questions? But really, there is that big why question. Is everything that we do really a preparation for something else? Is there always a reason for that has to do with tomorrow? I'm doing this because I need to be healthy. But why? Because I want to live long. What about today? Why wouldn't you have stopped to hear the music today, to enjoy this moment? Why is it that everything in life seems to be geared to something in the future? What about now? Is life really just one big laundromat? We bring in the clothes, we toss it in the washer, we add some detergent, we put some bleach in, we put in a few coins, we throw it then in the dryer, we take them out, we fold them, we wear them again, and a week later, we're back at the laundromat again. Is that really life? It's just the same cycle, and we keep going through it over and over and over and over again. On the 6th day of creation, God said, let us make man. And the big question is always, who's us? God said, let us make man. I thought there's only one God. So who is this us? And the answer is that the us is you and me. He made us human beings, the only beings endowed with freedom of choice. And he made us, these human beings, his partners in fulfilling his purpose of creating the world. So God invested in us. He invested within each of us a soul with the potential for us to develop it. As long as we're drawing breath on this earth, we all have a purpose to fulfill and an impact to make. Every moment of life is a precious gift. And yet for most of us, days can come and days can go with little or no consequence. Most days can be written off completely as if they never happened at all. One day more, one day less. Big deal. Avraham Palm of blessed memory was the headmaster of a very prominent yeshiva in Brooklyn called Torah Vidas. And once an elderly man in Rav Palm's community took ill and he had to be hospitalized. So Rav Palm sat down for a few minutes and he wrote the man a letter of encouragement, a letter of inspiration, along with his wishes for speedy recovery. And the letter was delivered to this fellow in the hospital. The man was so thrilled to receive this letter that Rav Palm took the time to write him a letter with such attention, with such warmth, with such wisdom, addressed to him from such a spiritual giant. It lifted his spirits. And he kept the letter next to him so that anyone that would visit him in the hospital, he would say, look, Rav Palm wrote me a letter. Look what Rav Palm wrote. It was so precious to him. He kept it literally by his pillow. He wouldn't go to sleep without the letter being there, and that's how precious it was. Now, several months later, the elderly man's condition took a turn for the worse, and unfortunately, he passed away. And at the funeral, the family members all made mention of this special letter that their father, that their uncle, that he received from the rabbi in his last days of life. So this letter became such a focal point of this person's life. Later that week, Rav Palm was told what was said at the funeral. And he was told how much this man appreciated and cherished the fact that he sent them this letter. And that they even spoke about the letter at the funeral. The rabbi thought for a moment and he said, this is rather frightening to me. It's frightening to me. Why is it frightening? It took me 5 minutes to write that letter. And yet it gave the recipient so much cheer, so much comfort, so much consolation. Look how much good I was able to accomplish in 5 minutes. So what frightens you? What frightens me is that when I come to the heavenly world, the Almighty is going to take this letter, he's going to show it to me, and he's going to say, look at the effect you had on another human being, and it took you 5 minutes to do it. Where were these 5 minutes for so many other people? It took 5 minutes to change someone's life. How many lives could you have changed had you put in the effort? And that's what frightens me. Had I known the effect that a simple letter can have, how would I ever be able to stop writing letters? Think about it. How much time and energy does it really take for us to do something sensitive, something thoughtful, that can have some lasting meaning for another person? How much energy, how much time, how much effort does it really take for us to reach out to someone and, as we call it, make their day, maybe even make their week? And yet, how often do we actually do it? We know it's true. We know that at any given moment, we can make someone happy. We can reach out to someone. We can do some act of kindness to someone we love, someone we care about, or a total stranger. How often do we do it? A wise person once said, the best thing in life are not things. What are the best things in life? Family, friendship, faith, gratitude, wisdom, knowledge, character, love, kindness, courage, convictions, ideals. Those are the essential ingredients for a meaningful life and truly a happy life. I'm sure you've heard the name Sam Walton. He's the multi-billionaire CEO of Walmart, one of the largest corporations in America. And he basically put his whole life into his business. And in that arena, he succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But it came at a price because he hardly spent any time with his wife, with his children, with his grandchildren. He never allowed himself moments of interaction, moments of connection, moments of celebration of his loved ones, because it was all business all the time. And they say about Sam Walton that as he was lying on his deathbed, he struggled to get out his last words on earth. And what came out of him, of his last words, were, I blew it. I blew it. For all of the billions of dollars and the great business success, by his own admission, he failed in life. That's why our sages say that life is short and certain things live on and stay with us forever. But as Sam Walton figured out a little too late, our money is not one of them. Our money, our careers, they're not eternal. That's not what we take with us. Comedian Stephen Wright once said, I intend to live forever. And you know what? So far, so good. The reality is, though, that nobody lives forever. Not even Rodney Dangerfield, who once said, my luck is so bad that if I bought a cemetery, people would stop dying. But I guess he never bought a cemetery because people still die. Or someone once said, they say such nice things about people at their funerals that it makes me sad that I'm going to miss it by a day or two. See, we make jokes about death, and that's sometimes the way we react to things that we're really afraid of. You know, Jews were always afraid of the czar, so they made jokes about the czar. They're afraid of high cholesterol, so we make a lot of jokes about food. But all kidding aside, many of us are afraid of death. Some are terrified of it. I think more than anything else, death scares us because we cannot wrap our heads around the notion of being in a state of non-existence. And when we can't wrap our head around something, we're afraid of it. What does that mean? That we are no longer, that we're going to disappear, that we no longer have awareness as a human being, that we will no longer matter, that we'll be gone, with only a trace of our ever having existed confined to the memories of those still amongst the living. What does it mean that we become nothing? And that's frightening stuff. So let me share a medrash with you that can perhaps help us a little bit. The medrash tells us a story. It's a parable. And it tells us a story, and it wants us to imagine this. Imagine a pair of twins, and they're resting comfortably in their mother's womb. Their mouths are closed. They're being fed through these tubes that enter into their navels without them extending any effort of their own. They're being kept warm by the fluids of the embryonic sac, which is their entire world. Everything is so wonderful. Everything is so peaceful. They're in a sheltered environment. They cannot envision the possibility of any different way of life. This is life, and this is existence. Now imagine that this set of twins is suddenly given the gift of consciousness, and they're able to think out loud, and they're able to share their thoughts with their twin so that each can understand what the other one is thinking. And they realize that things are starting to change in their world, in their womb, as the 9 months are coming to an end. It's not the same. Something is going on. Slowly but surely they feel themselves, they're turning, they're slipping, they're going lower and lower. So they begin to wonder, and communicate with each other what's going on. What does the future have in store for us here? The two brothers happen to be different personalities. One is an optimist. He's a believer by nature. The other is a pessimist, a skeptic by nature. And the brothers get into this debate. The believer is sure that there's a whole new life waiting for them after they depart from their present home. And he says to his brother, it doesn't make sense that God would have put us here for 9 months, cared for us, fed us, and allowed us to grow and develop only for it to suddenly come to an end without any purpose. There must be a greater plan that we don't see right now. I am sure that these 9 months were all just setting the stage for a much more meaningful life to follow. There is no way that the only thing we have to look forward to is oblivion. His brother, on the other hand, is much more practical and realistic. And he says to his optimistic twin, there you go again. You're confusing hope with reality. Look around you. Can't you see everything that allows us to live? The womb, the sac, the umbilical cord. It's all right here. Once we get popped out of this place, it's over. There's nothing else out there. This is it. This is our existence. This is our world. If we can no longer stay in this world, our existence comes to an end. But the believing brother doesn't get discouraged. He explains patiently that no, once they leave this world, their mother's womb, they will become more independent. They will have other ways of getting food and other ways of getting nourishment, and they will be able to move around even more freely. In fact, eventually we'll even be able to think and walk and talk and study and build and create things for ourselves. His brother mocks him and asks him, prove it. Where do you get these details from? Where do you get these fantasies from? And because he hadn't experienced any of it yet, it's just something he believed. He had emunah, he had faith that there was another existence outside of this womb, but he couldn't prove it. And so the debate continues for weeks until one day it happens. The water inside the womb bursts. There's a great deal of pushing. There's a great deal of pounding. The twins realize they're being forced out. The believer is the first one to go. His brother is still inside and he's listening closely for any hint to what might be happening. And then he hears his brother give out a loud scream. And he says to himself, I've been right all along. I just heard my poor brother scream in terror. It's the scream of death. It's the scream of non-existence. It's the end of his life, and my end is next. What a tragedy. Of course, what the pessimistic twin did not hear were the joyful shouts of Mazel Tov, as his mother and father are excitingly congratulating each other on the birth of their first child, who made his grand entrance into this world with a scream, not a scream of death, but a scream of life. So what appears from one limited perspective to be the end of life is actually the beginning of a higher form of existence. So too, says the Medrash, death is not the end to life. Death is a transition whereby our souls are granted the freedom to soar above the physical limitations of our bodies, of this sack that is the world we now live in, and are able to achieve a more blissful spiritual experience. But then again, if everything about our lives is defined by our bodies, by our struggles for physical existence, if all we do is spend our days running from one place to the other, from the school to the office, from the gym to the doctor, from the supermarket to the mall, and we're consumed exclusively with our physical needs, then it becomes very difficult to imagine any existence beyond the physical. If you take the physical away, what is left to life? That's why you could run by a train station and hear the most beautiful music in the world and just look at it as a nuisance because you have things to do. There are things on your checklist that need to be taken care of. If it's all about our bodies, if it's all about material possessions, then hey, once this body decomposes and reverts to dust, what else is there? Game over. And if that is our perspective, then yes, it can be very terrifying. But if life is about the spiritual as well, then maybe the optimistic twin talking about a new existence really is onto something. Somebody once approached Rabbi Abraham Twersky and he asked the following very simple question. Listen to the question and then listen to the answer. The question that he asked Rabbi Twersky was, how do you know you have a soul? We hear so much talk about the neshama, the soul, the soul, the souls. Everything in Judaism is about the soul. In prayers, we talk about the soul, and God gave me a soul. All this talk about the soul. How do you know? Prove it. How do you know you have a soul? And Rabbi Twersky answered in a very simple but profound answer. He said, I don't have a soul. I am a soul. I have a body. Which do you look at as your main source of existence? Is it the body or is it the soul? I have a body and I need proof that I have a soul, or I am a soul and I happen to have a body. If we understand that our souls are the gift that God himself breathed into us, as the book of Genesis defines, that there is a divine essence within us that is our very identity and our very essence, then you don't have to be a great mystic to infer that just as God is eternal, then so much more so, much that part of ourselves also be eternal. For if it came from God and God is eternal, then our soul is eternal, for it is a part of God. So of course there's an afterlife, what we call Olam Haba, a world to come. And we'll know more about it once we get there. But for now, the practical relevance of the afterlife to our current state is simply for us to make sure that our actions in this life are taken with a sense of their eternal ramifications. If I have a soul, if I am a soul, and after this existence in this world, my soul lives on, for my soul is a part of God, and as God is eternal, so is my soul eternal. And therefore, death is a transition of life from this material world to a more spiritual world. And I live on. My soul, which is my very essence, lives on. And as I've always mentioned, we're in no rush to get there. But as long as we are here on this world, in a material world, in a physical body, then our focus must be of what is truly the essence of existence. And how do I nourish that part of my existence? And what is the mission that God gave me in this material world with my physical body to nourish that existence? The message here is that we need to make it count, to make every single precious moment on this earth count, and to make sure that we leave an impact that will outlive us, that will outlive our physical presence on this earth. The real tragedy of death is that it represents the closing of the curtain of our ability to do good deeds. And at that point, we'll no longer have the free will to do good or the opposite. It's only what we will bring to that moment that will count. And so I'd like to propose something, not in a depressing way at all, but on the contrary, in a galvanizing and invigorating way. Over the last 2 decades, I would say, there's been a phenomenon out there called a bucket list. You probably heard the expression. The bucket list is there where people create this wish list of things they would like to do during their time on earth, during their limited amount of time that they have left on this earth. Or to put it more crassly, before they kick the bucket. And that's where I get the name, the bucket list. So I'm not so comfortable with the word bucket list. I don't think that life should be treated with language such as kicking the bucket. But the concept of putting together a list of things you would like to accomplish because every moment of life is precious is a very interesting idea for us to look into. I'm sure at one point or another, we've all thought about the following question, and it's the hard philosophical question. We've all asked it to ourselves. If God forbid you were told you had 1 year to live, how would you spend that year? And it makes us think about the value of life and the value of time and the things we still want to accomplish, the things we want to be remembered for. So why not have that same philosophical question and debate and discussion with ourselves without having a 1 hour year time limit clicking away? We're all going to live long and happy and healthy years, but we can still ask that question. And the question would be is, how do we want our lives defined? What would we want them to say about us and our mission here on earth and our accomplishments here on earth? So maybe it's a good idea that we all sit down at some point soon and we compile a list. We don't have to call it bucket list. We can call it life list. The things we want to do while we're very much alive, in the prime of our life. Now, if you research bucket lists, you'll find that people post their dream list, so to say, their life list, their life goals. It's very interesting to see what other people put as their most important things in life that they would like to accomplish. Many people seem to want to swim with dolphins. Some want to visit every single major league stadium in the entire country sometime during their life. Some want to bike across the country. Everyone's got their own things that they dream of that they would like to do, they'd like to accomplish while still here on earth. So yeah, we could fantasize with some of those ideas as well. And we could put down any of these ideas of what the things that we would love to be able to do and travel. But I'd like to suggest that aside for the mundane and aside for the joyous activities, I think we put down some deep spiritual desires of what we would like to accomplish. Things that we'd like to aspire to that will actually add some deep meaning and fulfillment to our lives. I'm going to throw out some suggestions, but this has to be your life list. It has to be things that are meaningful to you. So my suggestions are merely that. They're just suggestions, but you can come up with things of your own. The idea of establishing a weekly tradition of before candle lighting time on Shabbat, that you reach out to family members, if you still have parents alive, if you still have grandparents alive, that you call them a ritual of once a week, that you make this part of your life. And for those whose parents and grandparents are no longer amongst the living, that this is something you still do, that you talk to them. You talk to them once a week, even if they're in the heavenly world. We believe they're listening. For those that haven't been to Israel often enough or never been to Israel, maybe you want to put that on your list, that when this pandemic is over and when travel is open again, that you take your family to Israel, that you connect to your heritage there on the soil where it took place. Not just a tour of Israel for the wineries and the swimming and the beaches. And I'm talking about a heritage trip where you actually connect to your ancestry, where you go and you study the history of your people on the sites where it took place. Or consider joining a monthly shul club when again this pandemic is over and shuls are open. You wonder what's a monthly shul club? Well, we're making it up right now. A monthly shul club is you decide that you're going to go to shul once a month. That once a month you go to shul, whichever shul you're most comfortable with, but you make it part of your rituals of life. You know, there are many Jewish holidays on the calendar. You're familiar with the famous ones. You have the Rosh Hashanahs and Yom Kippurs and Passovers, but there are quite a few others. There's a holiday of Sukkot. There's a holiday of Simchat Torah, of Hanukkah and Purim, I'm sure. But there's also a holiday of Shavuot, which we'll celebrate tomorrow evening. That you decide that one year you're going to mark every Jewish holiday, learn all of its traditions, and keep every holiday that year. Of course, the mitzvah of tefillin and the mitzvah of Shabbat candles. These are all rituals, traditions, part of your heritage that you should make part of your list that you would like to accomplish in your lifetime. But we can step outside of the rituals as well into the world of kindness. I've often challenged people that you should adopt one person to mentor, or one person to care about, that there's a person on the face of the earth that knows that come what may in their life, they have someone to turn to, someone that cares about them, someone that they can call 24 hours a day. Pick that person, let them know you are there for them. If you're skilled in your profession and it's something you can train someone, pick a youngster and say, I'd love to mentor you into this career. I think you would be great at it. Let me teach you about this career. Let me help you find a job. The idea of making a shidduch, making a match. You put on your life list that you're going to find a match for someone that's a lonely person. And you're going to really work on it and try to find a way to bring two lonely people together. Again, these are just suggestions. And while I hope some of these resonate with you, the idea is for you to spend time and for you to think about this, to select goals that will be of lasting and enduring values, because chances are it won't be the stuff that you acquire or the adventures that you enjoy, but it will be the acts of goodness and kindness and meaning and purpose that you perform that will ultimately introduce you to the real answers into your life as to why everything, the question that we began with, but why? Back in 1863, on a hot summer day in rural Pennsylvania, there was a poor boy. He was going door to door selling trinkets in order to pay his way through school. And at one point, he was starting to feel very tired, very frustrated. He was becoming disillusioned by the reactions of people, by the rudeness of people, by the insensitivities of people. And he was on the verge of throwing in the towel. Forget it. I'm never going to be able to sell these products. I'm never going to be able to raise the funds to go to school. I might as well drop out now. And he was also very hungry and very thirsty. He only had a dime left in his pocket, which was actually worth something in 1863. So he decided that the next house, the door he would knock, he would ask them if they can give him some food, and he would pay them a dime for the food. He knocked on the door of the next house, and it was opened by a very pretty young lady. And suddenly he felt embarrassed to ask her for some food. So instead he said, "Can I have a cup of water?" And the girl said, "Certainly." And she went to the kitchen. She came back with a glass filled with milk and said, "You must be exhausted, so here's something a little more that gives you a little more nourishment than just plain water. Have some milk, it'll be good for you." And so he took the dime out of his pocket, wanting to pay the girl for the glass of milk that she gave. And she said, "Oh, no, I won't take any money. My mother always taught me never to accept payment for an act of kindness." "Well, in that case," the boy said, "then I thank you from my heart." And as the young man left the house, he felt physically stronger, but also his faith in mankind was restored. There are good people in the world. There are good people who do kind deeds, and they do the kind deeds for their own sake. And he smiled and he went on to the next sale and the next sale and the next sale. Let's fast forward many years later. That young woman became critically ill. The local doctors were baffled. They were unable to diagnose her condition, and they sent her to a big city to call in a specialist to study her rare disease. Dr. Howard Kelly was the founder and head of Johns Hopkins University Division of Oncology, was called to consult on the case. And after examining the chart, he went down the hall in the hospital to see the patient. And he recognized her immediately, though she didn't recognize him. And from that day on, Dr. Kelly gave her special attention. He was determined to do everything in his power to save her life. And after a long struggle, the battle was won. And Dr. Kelly requested that the business office submit the final billing to him first for approval. He looked over the bill. He wrote something on the edge of the invoice, and the bill was then sent to the woman's room. Though grateful beyond words to have been cured, the woman dreaded opening that bill, knowing that it would likely take her the rest of her life to pay it off. She took a deep breath. She unfolded the bill. She saw the writing that was scribbled on the side, and it said these words: paid in full with 1 glass of milk. Acts of goodness and acts of kindness are never short-term. They continue to perpetuate themselves over and over again while we're here and even after we're gone. The story is told of 2 close friends who, as the years passed, decided they wanted to do something to make their marks, to leave lasting impressions of themselves in this world after they've moved on to the next one. And so they each decided to do something significant to perpetuate their memories that way. The first man, who was the more affluent of the 2, had this huge obelisk, a magnificent pillar of marble. He cut it from a quarry at a cost of many millions of dollars. He then had it engraved in big, bold, gold leaf letters upon this pillar, and he placed it on the mountaintop so that all can see his name on this marble. And there it stood for years and years, an impressive, albeit pointless monument to a man and his wealth. The second individual, though not as wealthy, chose a very different way of being remembered. He dug up a wellspring near a desert thoroughfare. He planted shady fruit trees and installed benches all around the flowing spring of refreshing mineral water. And over time, that spot became a beautiful and popular oasis where travelers from near and far would stop to quench their thirst, to enjoy the sweet fruit, and to rest their weary limbs in the cool shade. For generations, people continued to benefit from the foresight of this wise and benevolent man. The Talmud tells us that we don't build monuments for the virtuous, for their deeds are their true memorial. So as I said, all of us should, and God willing, we will all live long, healthy, and prosperous lives till 120, as the saying goes. But as practical and thinking human beings, and as conscientious Jews, it is nonetheless perfectly appropriate to give thought to how would we want to be remembered many years from now? What sort of legacies we wish to leave behind for future generations? This Shabbat, the second day of the holiday of Shavuot, we recite the Yizkor prayer for our loved ones who are in the heavenly world. And when we think of them, we will think about the legacies that they left behind. We will think about the legacies and the memories of the things that they have accomplished in their lifetime. And quite often we would think about their kindness, about their love, about their commitment to family, about what truly mattered to them in their lives. And so we should reflect about our own lives, and we should think about our own lives as to what truly matters. I want to conclude with one short story. A few years ago, a beautiful young lady by the name of Christina Chesterman was killed by a drunk driver while riding her bicycle home after a long day of studying. She was only 21 years old at the time. Christina was about to graduate from nursing school. A few years after her passing, her parents began the agonizing process of cleaning out their daughter's apartment. And while there, Christina's mother, Sandra, came across her daughter's makeup bag. And when she opened the bag, she discovered that there was no makeup inside the makeup bag. What was inside was a folded sheet of lined paper. And on the top of it, it said, Christina's bucket list. Her mother was stunned. What kid makes a bucket list? As it turns out, Christina had started to compile this list when she was 16 years old. And amongst the things she had on the list was that she wanted to tour Niagara Falls. She wanted to save people's lives. She wanted to find love. She wrote that she wanted to go running through a field of poppies. She wrote that she wanted to take a ride in a hot air balloon. These are all nice, sweet, and wholesome goals. never to be realized as a precious life was so abruptly cut short. Suddenly, her parents knew what they needed to do. They decided that they would fulfill Christina's bucket list, and they would do it for her. At least those items on the list that they could fulfill. And so they visited Niagara Falls, and they went running through a field of poppies, and they took a ride in a hot air balloon. And each thing they did, they would post it on social media to say they did this for their daughter Christina, for this was what she had left on her bucket list. But something else happened, something quite amazing. As Christina's story began to spread across social media, other people decided that they too would sign on, and they too would fulfill the items on Christina's bucket list, and they would put their progress on Facebook. And it spread, and it spread, and thousands of people, and tens of thousands of people, total strangers, write to Christina's parents, and they give them updates on the fulfillments of Christina's bucket list. How much comfort this gives Christina's parents. Why am I sharing this story with you other than the fact that it's a story about a bucket list and I told you my thoughts about a bucket list? There's another reason, especially as we get ready for the holiday of Shavuot, as we've been speaking about the chosen people, as we've been speaking about our role as a member of the chosen people, and as we prepare ourselves for the memorial prayer of Yizkor. In a sense, is this not what the Torah is all about? The Torah is really a living and breathing life list. It's the bucket list. It's the life list of the Jew. So when we read about the lives of our ancestors, they're not just nice stories. They're not just historical figures. They are mission statements that we are being called upon to make our own. So if we save a life, you're checking off Noah's life list, because that was the story of Noah saving humanity. If you help someone that's hungry and you feed someone, you're fulfilling Abraham's life list, because that's what Abraham was about. If we devote ourselves to Torah, we're fulfilling Moses' life list, because that's what his life was about. If you demonstrate pride and courage in your Jewish identity, that's the life list of King David. So these are all challenges put before us for us to make this and incorporate it as part of our lives. And so it is with all those who came before us, who had these meritorious life lists. They're now waiting for us, and they're depending on us to be inspired by their lead and to perpetuate their legacies going forward. You see, once a soul passes on to the next world, it could no longer achieve further growth on its own. But there is one way, and only one way, that a departed soul can nevertheless achieve ascendancy in this world of truth. And that is if their memories and their legacies continue to inspire and motivate people in this world to perform mitzvot in their honor. So when we live a life on a higher spiritual plane, we can achieve immortality. Your parents and your grandparents live on in you, and you will live on in the lives of your children and your grandchildren, because they are part of your life, and you are part of theirs forever. No, my friends, life is not a laundromat, not at all. Let's draw up our own life lists. Let's set some real goals, and let us fill our lives with meaning, with beauty, with purpose, and with joy. I do want to announce that today's class was sponsored by Mindy Boxer. This is in honor of her mother's birthday. Happy birthday to Mindy's mom. You should be healthy. You should be safe. And anyone that would like to sponsor future classes, you just go to chabadconejo.com/sponsors, and I'll announce your class sponsorship for any future weeks. So again, today, busy day. I'll see you back 5:30. That's chabadconejo.com/Yizkor. 7:30, chabadconejo.com/Shavuot. That's for our 6 talks in 60 minutes, our TED Talks for pre-Shavuot. And then we will see you back again next Wednesday for a continuation of our Lunch and Learn class with you providing your own lunch. Everyone have a happy Shavuot, a Shabbat Shalom, a wonderful, safe, and healthy week.